Strong and wild, we rise up high. Conquer fears, won't let them reside. Heartbeats pound as we take the dive. Living now feels so alive. Heart steel veins glowing bright. Fitness gone in the dead of night. Dating game, we got the sight. Crushing finance, career out of sight. Men of now, we own it true. Breaking change, just me and you. Success stories everywhere. Living life beyond compare.
And I was muted, so showing my amateur hour here. What's going on, guys? It's Kevin from the Men of Now. If you know me as the Big Brother. Flying solo today. My normal co-host here, Alex, is on a business trip out of the country. So I wanted to throw something together real quick just to talk about something that, we're all in the manosphere. We're all in the space, so to speak. And most of us, when we find this area, we get caught up in red pill. Red pill quickly becomes black pill. Black pill quickly becomes men going their own way just because of the ideologies that are mentioned. Red pill is what I started with when I unplugged about 5 years ago. Got hooked up with some really great guys, got some really good information, but I started noticing a trend that it was just getting redundant. Women are bad, hypergamy, she's not yours, it's just your turn, monkey branching, that kind of stuff. And I got it, and I understood it, and I agreed with most of it. But then I started noticing that that's all it was. And so when me and some other guys started the Men of Now, we wanted to bring an evolution from the red pill and really not have a quote unquote term for it, but basically moving on and graduating red pill ideology into something that's more feasible to the average guy, because, most of us are average. And if you get caught up in, 80% of women only go after the top 20% of men, it kind of destroys your motivation to even try. So that's where MGTOW plays a big role in the space. And a lot of guys are going that way. And I was doing some research here recently, and if you're not familiar with Paul Elam is probably one of the OGs of the space. His book, An Ear for the Man, is a great book. He's been around for a long time. He's got a lot of great podcasts, a lot of great shows out there. I recommend you check him out. It's ELAM, Paul Elam. He recently did a show with a gentleman, I'm probably saying it wrong, but Shaha it's me, Shaha, I believe is his channel. So you might want to check him out. But they did a show, and it was called Gold Pill. And it talked a lot about, marriages in the 18th century all the way up till now. And so I wasn't really drawn to that video because it talked about dowries. If you're not familiar with the dowry, back up until about the turn of the 20th century, especially in Europe, dowries were very common when women wanted to marry men. And basically that was an incentive for the man to marry this woman, because the family of the bride promised monetary incentive, property, a piece of the business, something that was beneficial to the man. That's since gone away. A lot of the times that you hear dowry nowadays is talk to a passport bro that went to the Philippines or went to Thailand, and then realized real quick that when you marry a Thai or a Filipina, you're marrying not just her, you're marrying the family as well. And in Thailand especially, the dowries are still very much important, but that's on the other side of the spectrum. That's the man giving gold, giving money, cows, whatever they require as the family to marry that Thai girl. And in the Philippines, it's quite the same. However, it's not just a one-time thing. Talk to a lot of passport bros out there that they will tell you that even if she comes back to the United States and they start a life here, there's a certain amount that's expected to go back to the family on a monthly basis, weekly basis, annual basis, however it is. And so that's the dowry that we know of nowadays. But they pushed through and they explained how feminism, didn't just start in the 60s. It became very widespread in the 60s because you had stuff like TV and other types of media that could give it a bigger voice. However, you started seeing at the turn of the 20th century where women started with basically the premise of, well, I don't need to bring anything to the relationship because you get me, you get my beauty, you get my purity, which that doesn't happen anymore. But then at the end, they talk about gold pills. So I started doing some research on it. And this, I'd like this. I think that any man who is unplugging, trying to break away from the social norms, this should probably be the first one you learn, because gold pill it's about mastering yourself first. And a lot of it comes down to your finances, the way you have your life built, the way you're building your purpose, and the way you're building your empire. We live in a world full of noise. We're told to be nice, stay humble, work hard, but quietly. And maybe, just maybe, someone will notice and you'll get rewarded. But how is that worked out for most men that lived the traditional upbringing of how you're supposed to treat women or how you're supposed to live your life? Get a job, work hard, all that shit. It introduced me to a new way of thinking, a new frame, if you want to, a new reality. It's not red, it's not black, it's gold. The gold pill, it's not for everyone, but the gold pill is about one thing: power through mastery. Mastery of your finances, mastery of your own mind and your own discipline, mastery of your own time, your health, your body. It's about mastering oneself. And I think that's so important that a lot of guys spend too much time scrolling through mediocrity and seeing things through social media and thinking that's how life's supposed to be. And that's how they want to be. And that's how they're going to be successful, to drive the Lambos, wear the nice watches, that kind of stuff. That's what you need to be successful. But, I'm not here to argue who's right or who's to blame, but the gold pill is man building. And here at the Men of Now, that's what we're all about, is building men to be the men that they want to be, not the men they think they're supposed to be, not the thing that society has maybe impressed them to the way they're supposed to be. A lot of people like to argue over who's right, blame, all that kind of stuff. But, a man that embodies the gold pill, he's focused. He understands that the game's rigged, because it is. But instead of crying foul and blaming others, he learns the rules and plays to win. Because, here's the truth, guys. Success is power. Having options is power. Freedom is power that a man can have with himself. Doesn't mean you have power over other people, but that's power for a man's soul. That's power for a man's self, and guess what, man? Nobody hands those out for free. You got to work for those things. So first thing in gold pill ideology that I'm learning is you invest in your mind. Stop binging, watching mediocrity. I mean, we're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it too. Getting on YouTube, watching shorts, watching the same shit over and over. Maybe a guy tripping and falling, maybe a wife scaring her husband, but that's mediocrity. Think about it like this, guys. Every hour that you waste, or you spend, I shouldn't say waste, every hour that you spend doing something that's not bettering yourself is an hour that another brick could be laid in your foundation to building the life you want to live. When you start looking at it like that, you start thinking, okay, there's nothing wrong with some guilty pleasures and, doing some of the things that are fun for you. However, if you're wasting too much time with that, especially with stuff like porn, video games. I'm not hating on video games, but if you're spending more time playing video games than you are reading a self-help or a book about investing, that's when it starts to affect you, and it starts to be empower or depower you from becoming the man you want to be. And so, stop binge watching, start devouring books, start coming up with strategies, real world wisdom, that kind of stuff. And you don't have to just quit everything else and jump right into it. However, start setting at least 1 to 2 hours a day, because everybody can find 1 to 2 hours a day. Don't tell me you can't, to read 10 pages of a book, to, instead of watching YouTube, watch a tutorial on Skillshare about something that interests you, but something that can better you and help you along. Start building your empire. You don't need to be born rich. A lot of people think that. And I mean, there were some times, especially a long time ago, that, yeah, if you weren't born into the upper class, yeah, you wouldn't be able to get into the upper class. But times have changed, especially here in the West, especially here in America. It's still the land of opportunity. You still have a way to build your own legacy. Learn the game of money, learn how it works, learn how it can work for you, learn business, investing, how to leverage, how to properly leverage. And, because a man without capital, a man without success, unfortunately, is a man without a voice. And that's the cold hard truth that a lot of people don't want to come right out and say, but I'm going to say it right now. The guy at the bottom of the food chain doesn't have a voice, man. And instead of, even if you are at the bottom of the food chain, instead of complaining about it and making excuses why you're not at the middle of the chain or the top of the chain yet, start developing those strategies how you can get there. And that's what gold pill ideology is all about. It's controlling your energy, harnessing your energy, because discipline is your shield. Energy can be a currency for a man, because a body in motion stays in motion. We've all heard that. And a mind in motion, a mind working, a mind learning stays learning, stays peak performance, stays wanting more. However, if you let that slip and you get in a comfort loop where you've got a job that pays the bills, keeps food on the table, keeps the lights on, not much left over to go do the things you want, but it takes care of the necessities, it's very easy to get caught in what we call a loop of comfort. And then before you know it, 3 years have passed by and you haven't accomplished anything that you wanted to. And then, cut distractions is easy to say, but, the dopamine drips that you might get from, getting, a win on a video game or, watching porn, something like that. If you learn how to cut those out, you will learn that you didn't need them in the first place. And a lot of guys don't understand that. And I get it. You get caught in that routine, but if you start building your purpose and leading with your purpose, because I'm a strong believer, guys, every man out here, you create your purpose. There's no such thing as finding your purpose for a man. You have to create it. You have to go after it, and you have to own it. You got to do that. And I think that's what the gold pill is really all about, is a man leading his own destiny, his own purpose. And, it's not, guys, it's not about, driving Lambos, the nice watches. I know that stuff's cool and those are nice cars, but what I found, I'm 46 years old and I like those things too. But I can go to a car show and I can admire somebody else's Lambo, look at it, maybe even sit in it if the guy's nice enough. That's good enough for me, instead of having to pay the $350,000 and the $40,000 a year to maintain it, to have one sitting in the driveway. So it's not really owning success, money, all that. It's not really about those things. Now, if you really are a car enthusiast, I'm not hating on that kind of stuff, but don't make that your purpose. Building your empire, building your legacy, something that's going to outlive you, should be more important. All that other shiny stuff will come along with it in the end. He's not just making money. The gold pill man's making moves. He's building strategies. He's working with others. He's helping others. He only keeps his circle with the people that are doing the same things maybe even a little bit better him so he can learn. And that's what gold pill ideology is all about. And I think that it's far more important to learn that first when you're unplugging than to just go straight into red pill content where women are bad and they deserve nothing. And you should never do anything for a woman that you wouldn't do for yourself. That kind of stuff, because if you get caught up in that, you'll quickly become black pill and you're going to quit. But all men, we want to be respected. I would think. I know I do. I want respect. But to have respect, you've got to become valuable. You have to become indispensable, whether you're in a corporate career or you're a truck driver. It doesn't matter. Both of them make about the same amount of money, believe it or not. But to be respected in those both of those fields, you have to be valuable to that. You have to be dependable. So adopting the gold pill ideology will certainly help you achieve that, because that becomes your focus instead of worrying about all the other bullshit that comes along with all the other ideologies and pills out there that are shoved down your throat nowadays. If you want to be free, you got to own your time, all that kind of stuff. But the main thing is stop waiting for permission. Everybody can make plans. Every man can have dreams, aspirations, but until you start putting those into motion, nothing's going to happen, because nobody's going to give you permission. And if you're waiting for permission or you're waiting for that right time, it's never going to come. So get with a group, find some friends. They don't even have to be your friends. Find some people that are on the same path that you want to be, learn from them and grow them, and then make that your life's mission. All the other stuff will come along with that. But building yourself first is far more important than anything else, because you have to work inside out. And if anybody disagrees with that, leave a comment. I would love to talk about it and maybe have a discussion. Like I said, I was flying solo tonight, guys. And so this one's going to be quick. But if you like what you see, leave a like, possibly subscribe. If you're interested in the Men of Now, menofnow.us, check us out. Schedule a meeting with one of us and we can talk about it. I want to dive more into gold pill ideology because it's something I'm very interested in. I'm more interested in this than I've ever been anything since unplugging and becoming a part of the manosphere. So we will revisit this. Thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.
Strong and wild, we rise up high. Conquer fears, won't let them reside. Heartbeats pound as we take the dive.